Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I'm not going to be joined by my co-host right now, but they'll be back soon. But the title of today's episode is Back to the Future. We've done this title before. I feel like it is perfect for what we're doing now. We're going to highlight and talk about the stadium renderings that were released by HKS not too long ago, and also the draft and familiar faces. But to be able to talk about all the latest developments, the newest things coming about, is good friend of the show, David Harrison. And thank you, David, for taking some time out for me on today. How are you doing?
No, I appreciate the invite as always. I'm doing good. Hope you're doing well as well.
Yeah, like I told you, I just got back from Gettysburg. My wife got it for me. Did a little staycation out there to just to embrace Battlefield, just because it's something that I enjoy. And it wasn't until I got to Herp's Woods where I was really like, oh, this is where I am. Like
Yeah.
it took a while to soak in, but once it did, it was like, holy crap, man! Once you're on the field, and you can visualize it. It's a completely different story.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a special place for sure.
Absolutely is. But I do want to talk about the stadium renderings. I
Hmm.
did find the timing of it just a little bit questionable, just based on where we are right now. And I understand that they wanted to get this out to generate excitement. Is there any details that you can enlighten us with of what the stadium is possibly going to be providing?
Like as far as like the interior.
Well, anything, because I know a lot of the fan base is questioning tailgating at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I don't know what the plan is per se for tailgating. It's actually Eric Flack, the investigative reporter for WSA 9, actually tweeted out another rendering just today, Friday afternoon, that shows like the western approach to the stadium.
Okay.
At least the idea of the western approach to the stadium, which of course is the direction like so many people used to walk up on RFK back in the day. And the rendering shows like a grass, open grass field, and there's some tents over there on the side, and they kind of look like the tents that you see out at Northwest Stadium when folks are tailgating and things like that. There's no cars, right? There's no cars in the picture. So
Right.
like if you're trying to drive up or like, tow in a grill or something like that, I don't know if that's going to be possible. But what I can tell you is, we had a conversation with one of the members of Commanders, front office, way back when this whole thing really first started. And one of the things we asked them was about tailgating because we knew that, for fans, that was obviously going to be a really big deal. And at the time, like obviously, this thing is still 4 years from being built and completed and all that stuff. But I can just tell you that they understand it's a huge deal. They understand it's definitely a big concern for the fan base, and they're going to do everything in their power to either provide the space to be able to do it or provide what they at least hope or believe would be a suitable replacement, whether that's enough sports bars and things like that. And it might take some creativity, right? Like instead of your traditional tailgating, do your podcast or organize with a local restaurant or something like that, or spot to like do your show out of there and have like a fan rally. I know Commanders fans are really good at the rallies, and it might turn into that type of environment, but it may not be the exact same thing that you're used to at Northwest, but they understand and they're putting in the effort. That's the best I can give you right now.
Yeah, and we have come a long way since the moat and people, rock climbing the side of the stadium with those renderings that Snyder put out. So I really enjoyed the way that it was portrayed, in the sense that it was similar to like the Capitol building, kind of giving it that look, right? And I thought they did a
Yeah.
very good job of incorporating that in it, given with the Capitol in the background. I thought that was a fantastic touch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they did a really good job of kind of showcasing, this is how it's going to fit into, I don't know if you want to call it a skyline, but like the cityscape and how it kind
Yeah.
of is going to blend in. And yeah, some of the other renderings that have come out is like there's one that kind of looks from the Capitol building out and how it's going to look. And it's not this monstrosity or intrusive, type of thing. I've kind of used the example of, I've been to Chicago quite a few times over the course of my life. And you talk to Bears fans or people in Chicago, and the reason they hate Soldiers Field is because they feel like it looks like a spaceship just landed in the middle of the city. It's so out of place and it's just so kind of weird, honestly. That unless you're a football fan, you just kind of go by and you're just like, well, like that thing doesn't even belong there. So it looks like they're definitely making sure that as much as possible, it's a building that looks like it belongs in the district.
Yeah, and obviously it's not going to be completed. They say the blue ribbon cutting is going to be in 2030, so 4 years or 5 years from now. 4 years from now, we're in 26, right? I'm lost in space
Yeah.
right now. But for 4 year build, which makes a lot of sense. Coming
Yeah.
from somebody who works in construction, that's about right around the time that you want to do, and that's probably a smart way for them to go about it. But speaking of smart ways, we hired DJ Williams as the quarterback
Huh?
coach, and obviously he worked his way all through the Saints for a couple years. He was offensive assistant for them, then became the assistant quarterbacks coach in Atlanta for a year before being promoted to quarterbacks coach last season, and then this season we are hired him as a QB coach, and we know he's the son of Doug Williams, which brings up the
Yeah.
question of possible nepotism, favoritism towards Doug Williams. What would you say to that, David?
I would say that Doug Williams has been in Washington for quite a while. So if there was going to be a nepotism hire for Doug Williams, probably would have happened before now, right? Like
Yeah,
if that was going to be the case. Look, the thing that I'm excited for about DJ Williams, like I don't know him, haven't met him yet, and it's hard to get a beat on assistant coaches for other teams. Like you only really get a feel for assistant coaches on the team you cover when you get to like training camp and you can do and see them in the hallways and you kind of get the opportunity to talk to them, see him in action, see him work, right? Like if Sharif Floyd wasn't an assistant defensive line coach for the Washington Commanders, I couldn't really tell you much about him as a
right.
coach and what he does on the practice field. So I don't know much about DJ Williams other than everything that you just said. But what I can tell you is that he worked under Sean Payton. He worked under Dennis Allen, who's a defensive coach, but still a very successful coach in the NFL. He worked for the current Broncos offensive coordinator, and his name is escaping me for some reason, so I apologize for that. But I remember when Jameis Winston went to New Orleans, and part of this was a little bit petty on Jameis's part, trying to get back at the Buccaneers and things like that. But he kind of said that when he arrived to New Orleans and worked with Sean Payton and his staff, that it was like going from a community college to an Ivy League college to learn how to play quarterback. You know, okay, so some of that's pettiness, but also some of that is valid. Like he really felt like he was in a good area to learn how to play quarterback. And look, DJ Williams is part of that staff, and obviously he's come up through that. He's been in Atlanta. He's worked with a young quarterback like Michael Penix. He's worked with a veteran quarterback like Kirk Cousins and everything kind of in between. So the experience is certainly there. The pedigree is certainly there. I've actually got requests right now out for quotes from a lot of the coaches that have worked with him, including Sean Payton and all those people. Now, some of them are busy with playoffs, so I don't know if I'm
Yes.
going to get answers from them. But, I figured I'd give it a shot. Worst case scenario, when we speak to Coach Blau next, which, hopefully will be like next week or something, obviously he's going to get asked about DJ, why the hire was made, things like that, and we'll get more information then.
Oh, my man. And which brings up the next question I had for you regarding David Blau. It's well documented, his history of coaching, how he came into the league. I was watching a clip earlier of JP interviewing Colt McCoy, talking about David Blau like he's a salt of the earth, biblical kind of background to that, and just saying how hard of a situation was for him to come into, and he really liked David Blau. And obviously he learned from Cliff Kingsbury. He was with Josh, up in Detroit as well. And so my question to you is, what do we expect with David Blau? And off of that, what do you think that he would take from Cliff's system?
Yeah, it's hard to really have expectation for David Blau, I think, right? I actually just published an episode on Lockdown Commanders about this very topic. And basically what I dove into is here's everything David Blau has been exposed to. Here's kind of the library of knowledge that we know that he has, which certainly could be more expansive. But as far as how he's going to interpret it, how he's going to collect it and put it all in action is going to be up to him. What I can tell you is what I believe, and what I believe is you're going to get a coach who's very aggressive, but he's also going to be very intelligent. So if you go back to his time as a starting quarterback, he only has 7 starts during his NFL career, but those 7 starts can still tell you a little bit of something because, as we know, usually offensive coordinators and quarterbacks at least collaborate on the first 15 plays of
Right.
every single game. So I went back to look at the 7 games that David Blau started in the NFL in those first 15 games to see if I could just kind of pull something from basically a little bit of the competitive mindset of David Blau. And what I really enjoyed is the fact that in 2 of those 7 games, which is not a lot of games, but it's 28% of his starts in his NFL career, he hit, not just attempted, hit a 75 or more, a 75 plus yard touchdown in 2 of those 7 games.
Mm.
One of them with the Lions, or one with the Lions. Actually, I think both with the Lions. One against the San Francisco 49ers, who at the time had the #1 pass defense in the NFL
Wow.
that season. So it just shows you that he's not a guy who's going to be afraid of whatever reputation the defense he's facing has. All these things. As a rookie, David Blau's air yards per attempt, were over 8 yards per attempt, which is very, very aggressive. You go back to Jaden Daniels in 2024, his air yards per attempt was about 7.4 yards. And we were all going, man, this rookie is super aggressive. Man, this rookie's throwing the heck out of this ball. David Blau was doing it more as an undrafted free agent rookie in his first year in the NFL. So I think David Blau is going to be aggressive, but he also has a background in, heavy fronts, right? Working with the Detroit Lions. He's had a working history with Anthony Lynn. I know Anthony Lynn's time in Detroit didn't really go very well, but they know each other. And at least as of right now, Anthony Lynn isn't going anywhere. So I would assume that their relationship is pretty solid. But there's also, like you said, there's the air raid background. David Blau also has a tight, a deep relationship with Jeff Brom, who has a little bit of like a basketball on grass type of a reputation. So that the great thing about Coach Blau is at 30 years of age, with 7 career NFL starts, this is a man who's been exposed to no fewer than 7 different ways of creating offense. And I think that the best thing for David Blau to do, and what I expect David Blau to do, is take a little bit of all of it, including stuff from Cliff Kingsbury, right? Now, he's also been in some bad offenses. Cleveland's offense, the year that he was there for training camp anyway, wasn't the greatest offense in the world. Cliff certainly, obviously, had some things go wrong. And I think a lot of times we can learn from the things that go wrong and the things that don't go well, just as much as we can learn from the things that go well. So I think there's going to be a little bit of everything. And the important thing to remember is that it's his first time doing this, right? So when you see him week 1 of 2026, remember, like, this is his first time doing it. So if, on 2nd and 3, he calls a play and you're like, bro, what is that play call? Understand, he's going to go back and watch the tape. He's going to look at his own performance as well. It might take a little bit of time. But, look, Ben Johnson wasn't always Ben Johnson. He had to become Ben Johnson. He had to go through some growing pains. David Blau is going to go through those same growing pains. But I think the similarities between the two coaches is that they have a library worth of experience. Like, this 30-year-old has about 60 to 80 years of coaching experience that's been dumped into him by other coaches that he's worked with.
Yeah, and I know, Dave, that you were previously with the Bucks covering them, and there's been a lot of circus-like things going with Washington over the past 20 years when it comes to just leadership in front office and coaching. And I know Diana Rossini had talked about a kind of rift in the relationship between somebody and Cliff. Ultimately, do you think that this move, the parting of ways between Cliff and the team, do you think this has more to do with David Blau, or is it based on the rift?
I mean, I don't know what a rift is. I think at the end of the day, Cliff wasn't willing to change his
Okay.
offense and adapt his offense. And I mean, it's one of those things that when you hire a guy that you don't really know, there's a risk, right? And Dan Quinn had never worked with Cliff Kingsbury before. Adam Peters had never worked with Cliff Kingsbury as a coach before. And those are the risks that you take when you kind of bring somebody in and you don't necessarily know their pedigree, or not their pedigree, but their mindset on things, right? And Cliff, he himself said that he had a plan to run a different scheme in 2025 and didn't have the opportunity because of X, Y, Z. But at the end of the day, the offense we saw in 2025 is the exact same offense we saw in 2024.
Yep.
All the way down to, I mean, Olamide Zaccheaus and and Deebo Samuel ran nearly the exact same amount of left to right jet sweeps and right to left jet sweeps a season apart. Like, that's how, to the minutia, the offense we saw in 2025 was the same offense we saw in 2024. And you saw what defenses did against it. Cliff was asked at the end of the season, hey, like, what are your thoughts on having to change your system, having to adapt to the fact that defenses are catching up to you? And he flat out said, I've had success in Arizona. We had success in Washington, talking about 2024. I see no reason to change. And that's a problem. Like, in the National Football League, you can't just refuse to change. You can't think that your way is the only way and all these other things. And you hear the report that, Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn met Friday morning, whatever day it was that they mutually separated or parted ways. And I confirmed that meeting happened. They talked, and at the end of that conversation, they agreed that it wasn't going to work. So my assumption that I can make from there, and this is not verified, is that Dan Quinn said, hey, listen, dude, like, we need to continue growing. We need to continue evolving. We've heard Dan Quinn talk about that over and over and over again from the day he arrived here in Washington. And if Cliff gave him the same answer he gave us, which is, I see no reason to change, something on that offense had to change. And if the guy running it's not willing to change, then you got to change the guy running it. And I think that's what ultimately led to that situation happening. David Blau, I think what's really interesting is, remember, Dan didn't bring David Blau in. Cliff brought David Blau in. So David is a quote unquote Cliff guy, although I don't put him in anybody's singular coaching tree, to be quite honest with you. But 2 years later, he's now a Dan Quinn guy. So that shows you just how impressive David Blau has been in the organization. And I can just tell you, like, seeing the players interact with him, even like when we do an interview with him and he's got like 5 reporters around him, how many players just get excited because, oh, Blau's getting his press, he's getting his pub and all this stuff. And it's not just offensive players, defensive players. Tressway gets excited, right? Like, this is a guy who has respect in the building, and that is going to go a long way this season.
Yeah, and speaking to that, I remember the videos of practice of him competing against Jaden Daniels with throwing the footballs into the net, right? So obviously he's a very hands-on type of guy, and obviously just being able to push Jaden and trying to get to his ceiling, right? And I think that you could make the argument as that's probably a big cog into what was going on before, is being able to maximize Jaden Daniels. Now, I saw that you had wrote an article, I think it was Sports Illustrated, regarding the DC position and some guys that are available who are a good match for Washington and what they would like to do. If you could expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what is a quote unquote good match is kind of eye of the beholder type of thing. I think most of us are kind of on the Brian Flores train. Like, Brian Flores is an actual possibility, then please make that happen.
Right.
I think a lot of people assume he's going to get a head coaching opportunity, but listen, he interviewed with the Baltimore Ravens. He took a defensive coordinator interview after that interview. Usually guys don't do things for no reason. The Washington Commanders didn't need to do another interview with a minority candidate to satisfy the Rooney Rule. So it wasn't anything like that. Now he has been requested to interview with the Steelers. I don't have any word on whether or not he's going to take that interview. I assume he's going to take that interview. But if the Steelers let him out the door as well, listen, he hasn't had any other opportunities. And there's all the conversations about him being blacklisted by owners because he sued the league and outed his own owner for wanting to tank and doing all this other stuff. I'm not worried about the struggles of billionaires. All I know is the only defensive coordinator job that he's interviewed for is the one in Washington. And to me, that's not nothing. It doesn't guarantee he's coming, but to me, it means that there's at least a possibility that he's going to come, because Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, not really waste of time type of guys. I've heard theories. It's like, well, he just took the interview so that he could leverage the Minnesota Vikings into a bigger deal. Okay, the Minnesota Vikings might give him a better deal, but I'll tell you right now, if Brian Flores went to Ashburn just for that reason, he's wasting everybody's time, and that's not going to sit well in the coaching community, which is a very tight-knit community, and they all share information and talk to each other. So that would be a pretty bad move on Coach Flores' part. I don't think that's the situation there. Outside of that, Patrick Graham brings a little bit of a different flavor than Dan Quinn. Not as aggressive as a Brian Flores type of guy, but a four-man front type of dude who likes to get his linebackers free-flowing and open to pursue the ball carrier, pursue the quarterback. Likes to use 2 high shells, which is different than the single high coverage that we've seen in Washington over the past few years. And then Carl Scott out of Seattle, I think, is the most interesting candidate. He's young, never been a defense coordinator, never been a play caller, but he's worked in a lot of different systems. He worked in an A-gap system in Minnesota. He worked in a cover 3 system under Pete Carroll in Seattle. And now he's worked in a master of disguise system with Mike McDonald in Seattle. So like David Blau, he's been exposed to a lot of different things in a very short period of time for a coaching career. And that kind of mixture of knowledge would be really, really interesting. So he's probably the most intriguing candidate, but I think Brian Flores is the number one. And then Patrick Graham, I would be good with, is he's kind of like the between guy, I suppose.
I got you. And my last question for you regarding the draft coming up at pick 7. In regard, where are you in terms of trading back, staying put, or possibly trading away the pick for a player if possible?
Yeah, I'm nowhere on there. I'll be honest with you, I haven't done a single minute of draft work yet because we are fully in the coaching cycle, and I'm just fully diving into these coaching candidates to figure out who they are, what they might bring. But I will tell you this: I'm typically team trade back. There are some interesting players that I already just know about just because we watch football, so we know about guys like Caleb Downs. There's edge rushers there's multiple edge rushers that are out there. Obviously, Sonny Styles is another Buckeye, and I'm a Buckeye fan, so I know my Buckeyes. But I don't know, man. Off-ball linebackers that early in the draft, that's probably a trade back scenario for an off-ball linebacker. unless you just think he's going to be the next, basically the next Bobby Wagner, I suppose, if you want to call it that. And I feel like this team has pretty good confidence in Jordan McGee. And if you go out there and spend a first round pick on an off ball linebacker, you're basically saying that Jordan McGee is going to be a backup through the course of his rookie contract. I don't think they're there. But again, the D coordinator is going to make a difference there. That's the biggest reason I'm not into the draft conversation yet, because I think we all can agree that the majority of the work needs to be done on the defensive side of the ball as far as the roster is concerned. And until I know the scheme that we're dealing with, or at least have an idea of the scheme that we're going to be dealing with, I'm going to focus in on guys that I think fit the Commanders. And right now, I don't know what the Commanders are going to look like. So that's why I've been kind of staying away from it. However, now that we have a little bit of a gap in the news cycle while we all wait for the hire to come down, I will dive into some of that this weekend. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I had written out a question with some guys, hypothetical, at 7. So I won't push that on you. I'll let
No,
you.
go for it. You can go for it. I mean, I have a general, like, I just haven't done any tape studies or anything like that.
I got you.
You
Well,
still
if
ask
you
questions.
at 7, they stayed put, hypothetically speaking. If you had to choose between Caleb Downs, David Bailey, the edge rusher, Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver from Arizona State, Jeremiah Love, the running back from Notre Dame, who would you pick?
Yeah. Man, I would love to throw out Jordan Tyson because I'm an Arizona State guy. That's where I got my bachelor's degree, is where I did my undergrad and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going offense. I know a lot of people love Jeremiah Love. Look, the kid has got everything. I 100% see it. This team has got to go defense. Like bottom line, this team's got to go defense. And honestly, Adam Peters kind of seems, it's only been 2 drafts so far, so don't get crazy with it. But there's a predominant theory in NFL scouting worlds and NFL roster building worlds that the 5 things you need to build a successful team are the passer, a pass protector, a pass rusher, a playmaker, and a pass defender. And it's in that order. Well, the first year AP was here, he got a passer. The second year, he got the pass protector. The next guy on that list is a pass rusher. So for me on that list, I'm going David Bailey out of Texas Tech. First of all, the dude is just a beast anyway. The dude is just legit anyway. Caleb Downs can obviously contribute to the pass rush and all that stuff, but he's kind of in the same situation as a guy, as anybody in the off ball type of situation. The further you get from the ball, the less important you are. Like, let's just be real about it, right? But I think you have to be really good in the trenches if you want to be competitive for a long time. The Washington Commanders, look, I love what Dorrance Armstrong was doing when he got hurt, but he can't do it by himself. Dietrich Wise wants to come back. Von Miller wants to come back. And even if they do come back, everybody knows, like, they're not going to play in the new stadium, right? So if you look at this roster, like, we have the unique situation of looking at who on this team do we think is going to play in the new stadium. If they're not going to play in the new stadium, you need to go find a dude that might be able to play in the new stadium.
Thank you.
And right now, you have no edge rushers on this roster.
Thank you.
That I can tell you definitively needs to be there in 2030 when the thing kicks off. That means you got to go edge rusher.
Absolutely agree. Thank you so much for answering that correctly, David. Obviously, it's just a hypothetical. All those guys could be gone by the time we get there, of course. But thank you for answering the question. Before you get out of here, I'd like to plug your social media handle and your show, sir.
Sure, yeah. David Harrison. D Harrison 82 on Twitter, D Harrison _82 on Instagram, and Locked On Commanders, WSA 9. And I don't actually know what the URL is, but Commanders on SI is where I also do a lot.
And I'm very surprised that you're such a big supporter of David Blau after at Purdue. He did upset the Buckeyes when he started.
On him. Hey, look, I love competition, man. I never hate anybody for being a good competitor and, game recognized game. I remember, listen, I wore an Ohio State jacket to practice one day after Ohio State put a little bit of a whooping on Michigan, and Mikey Sandersill and I had a nice little fun interaction, and he forgave me for wearing it, and I didn't give him too much crap because I'm not a player, so I'm not going to boast on a player when I'm just, I'm a guy sitting in the stands, things like that. And then not too long after that, I wore an Arizona State quarter zip because, again, I'm an Arizona State grad, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who spent his last year of college football at Arizona, gave me a little crap for that. But then I also told him, listen, go ask Commanders fans who at least one of the first, I don't know about the first, but at least one of the first media members to talk about you pre-draft as an exciting prospect for the Washington Commanders. And if they're being honest, they're going to tell you it was me. So he forgave me for wearing that. So look, college rivalry is fun. But at the end of the day, man, like, they're all Commanders. So I want them to be successful because who the hell wants to jump on here and talk about losing football, man? Like, we all want to talk about winning football. So fan or not, it doesn't matter. We all want to see the same thing.
My man. David, thank you so much for your time, brother. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the playoff games as well, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
All right, man. Have a good one. All right, everybody, we just talked to the man, Mr. David Harrison. Always appreciate his time and being able to come on here and talk to us. And now we are joined by one of the probably the best people to come out of New Jersey, besides Goody, in quite some time. Not much comes out of Jersey, except for a bunch of trash talking, and that is Mr. Keith Gray. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, Kyle? How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm doing well. It's been a long time, and I know that you reached out a couple weeks ago and say you wanted to, vent a little bit. So I wanted to give you your stage. I want to give you your soapbox, so to speak, on to speak your feelings, man.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate that. I haven't done this in a while, so I'm going to be a little rusty. I mean, the pod that we were doing, the guys went ahead and took that over, and as my kids are getting older, man, life is getting busy with sports, and
You're a good
I don't
man,
know.
Keith.
I'm trying. I try to be. It's all I can do.
I know, I know. So what's on your mind, man? What's up?
Listen, I 2012. I'm going to go back that far. We as a fan base, we were so enamored with RG3, right? And as we should have been. It was a successful season, right? And I was that guy, man. I went all in for this guy, right? And this guy could do no wrong. Well, we know how that story ended, right? So
Right.
now let's fast forward into 2024, right? Same scenario, right? Except for the difference is with Jaden Daniels, we have ourselves an elite quarterback. But what is driving me nuts at this point, and I learned a very valuable lesson from 2012. What is driving me nuts is the fact that our fan base believes that Jaden Daniels can do no wrong. And I just don't know how any of us can look at how this season went and how this season went for Jaden Daniels and not be concerned with his, durability in this league. We know we have ourselves an elite quarterback. We learned that in 2012. We know that this guy probably, if he can stay healthy, can be an all-time great. He can win us some Super Bowls. But Kyle, I'm not sure after this past season, 2025 season, that he can hold up in this league. And when you bring that up to the masses, they come back at you as if you're talking crazy and you're hating on a quarterback. No. What I won't do, though, is fall in love the way that I did in 2012. And I will not fall in love with Jaden Daniels. With everything that I said, I will not fall in love until I can see another full season, because this year was absolutely abysmal. Now, it wasn't all his fault, right? But if you can't really be a logical fan and sit back and think he was injured all season, and you're not concerned about that going into next season, then I think we have bigger problems as a fan base than I thought before. What are
Well,
your thoughts on that?
you bring up valid points. Like, that is reality. I do think the verbiage being used can be twisted in a way that you are not meaning to. Because if somebody, a layman, a nonchalant fan would hear you say you can't take it or be in this league, right? What you're essentially saying is based on injury, not based on his production as a quarterback, right? That's not what you're saying. You're not saying that he can't hang in this league from a quarterback perspective. You're saying just specifically with an injury concern. And I would tell you, you're 100% right in your thinking of being skeptical, of asking questions, is this possible? Because I've gotten into the arguments with people myself this season saying you can blame it on Cliff. You can blame it on DQ for playing him. You can say that till you're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, Jaden Daniels has to do what's best for Jaden Daniels and protecting himself, because the more he does that, he protects the team. And you saw this season when Jaden wasn't on the field, there wasn't much to write home about. And so that's what you ultimately fall with, is saying this team goes as far as Jaden does. And as much as we don't want that to be the case, you want the team to be built in a way that, like the Eagles were 2 years ago, where they lose Jalen Hurts, they have Kenny Pickett come in, and they still win games. They're still producing in a big way, and they're actually very good. You want the team to be that way, but at the moment, it's not. And so a lot hangs on Jaden, to your point, and to say, is this sustainable? And that's where we need Jaden Daniels. I'm not going to say we need, because this is just it's a kid's game with adults playing. But I understand what you're saying. I understand that you're saying he's been injured now for 2 seasons in a row in his first 2 seasons in the league. Is this sustainable long term? And as a smart person out there would say, it's probably good to have backup plans. It's probably good to ask this question because, like you said, you don't want to fall in love to the point where you're like, this is it, this is fine. You always want something to fall back on. And so I'm not going to be willing to say that you're wrong completely. I'm not going to go about it and say you're being too aggressive. I will admit that when I did see you tweeting this out, I did think that your wife stole your phone for the day, her being an Eagles fan. So I thought that maybe she was trying to stoke the fires a little bit on Twitter. But when you said that you wanted to come on and talk, I was like, oh wait, he's actually legit about this. He's legitimately concerned and honestly pissed off. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the raising of the ticket prices, because I know the output of this season, and they raised the ticket prices. I understand from a stadium perspective, but from a fan perspective, it's like, are we really going to be getting better based on what we have right now? And I can understand by looking at it and saying, dude, he hasn't been on the field a lot this season. Should we be concerned? Am I wrong in my estimation?
No, you're 1,000% correct. Like I said before, of course I kind of disconnected myself from um, Twitter, X, whatever we want to call it these days,
I still
from
call it
this
Twitter.
season. Yeah, so do I. So I disconnected myself for the most part because after that Bears game, we kind of saw how this season was going. Then when it was injury after injury, and then the team was just riddled with injuries, there was nothing good at this point to say about this season. I sold off all my tickets. Listen, I don't even care that ticket prices went up. That's not where my
Okay.
anger is coming from. I expect ticket prices to go up because at the end of the day, the NFL is a business, right? And I understand that part of it. However, I also have a level of expectation, as a fan. Now, I know we can sit here and talk about sophomore slumps and so on. I didn't coming into Jaden Daniels, second year, I didn't have the same expectations as to what was achieved in 2024. I considered us very lucky to be where we were. I considered that Jaden Daniels carried this team on his back. Our defense struggled all season, and but yet did just enough to keep us in the game to where Jaden Daniels can win at the end. And we took on the name Cardiac Commanders, which now the Bears have that. The Bears are having a similar type season,
Yes, they are.
right? That we had, and good for them, right? Like, I don't get into the Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels beef. I think it's stupid, but I understand why people do it because it's the same draft class. But I'll speak about that draft class here in just a second, because that's what really eluded me to say I've got something to say. Because when I get on, I do read. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to interact, but we had once again another magical year, which we saw that in 2012. In 2025, it seemed like we were willing to give Jaden Daniels a Hall of Fame jacket for that season. Now, to be fair, I get it. It's been years since we've seen this as fans. We're excited. And honestly, anybody that understands the game of football, I wouldn't even say knows the game of football, but understands the game of football, could look at Jaden Daniels and say, this kid has what it takes to win. This kid has what it takes to bring
Correct.
trophies to the DMV. There's no question about it. You don't have to be an expert to know that this kid's composure was nothing that we haven't seen in years. The composure was just unreal. Composure in the pocket, composure of when to take off and run. And he that first hit he took, he didn't slide. And I said, here we go again. But obviously, as the season progressed, he was sliding, he was running out of bounds, he was, doing all the right things. And, you know, it looked like we've got it. We got our guy. Now we need to start building pieces around them. So I knew in 2024, we all knew we got our guy. Now is the rebuild, so to speak. Now is where we're building pieces around him. And so me as an older fan who has seen this before, this is where the true patience has to come in, right? And the true patience is, lower the expectations. I didn't think that we would make it to an NFC championship game this year, right? Tougher competition, tougher schedule. But I did have expectations that we would have a winning season and compete.
Yes.
And we did not. And I know that we did not due to injury, due to, mainly injury. You can name all kinds of different things on why we didn't, but to only win 5 games after the year before going to the NFC championship game. And yes, we got blew out. I knew we weren't going to win that game, right? And if it wasn't for those 3 turnovers, maybe we don't get blown out. Maybe it would have been a decent game, but I didn't expect to win. I was just happy that we got there because what we saw as fans is progression. And then it went a complete regression the next season. And that's where my anger comes from, right? I can accept the fact that we're still not a good enough team to get deep into the playoffs or get to the Super Bowl. But what I wanted to see was continued progression. And instead, we saw the complete opposite. And yes, that pisses me off. That's where my anger comes in. And then when I fired off the tweet that I did, I can't help but to look at the playoffs and see Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Drake May, right? All doing their thing. And here we are with 5 wins this season and a quarterback who couldn't stay healthy. Now, again, I'm not putting that on Jaden Daniels that his injuries were the reasons why we only won 5 games. That's absolutely false and incorrect.
Right.
The whole team was decimated. We know that it was NFL history, right? For the most injuries to a team.
Yep. Well,
yeah, I mean,
I'm not sure about history, but in the season, we had the most games missed by starters.
I would almost look it up. And maybe I'm wrong, and someone who knows better than I will could correct me, which is fine. But I almost think that it was maybe it was in team history. I heard the term history.
It could have very well been.
Yeah, and listen, so it's not all on Jaden Daniels, but as a disgruntled fan, seeing the way that the season went, and then you see all those other guys that were in that same draft class, and I'm not saying that they're better than Jaden Daniels. I'm just saying I'm pissed off because they're in it and we're not. Especially when we had the year before, we were into the NFC Championship game. And as a fan, man, we just want so much more for our team, and they didn't deliver. And that's where the anger comes from.
I'm with you. And only thing that I would come back with and say is last season when we were going jab for jab with Bears fans, all throughout the season, they couldn't go a day without thinking about Jaden Daniels. And it was very questionable to me because I was like, we are in the same boat as you guys. We both have been quarterback deprived basically in our entire franchise. We've never had franchise quarterbacks, us and Chicago. So why are you coming at us? And it's simply because Bears fans their hope was getting attacked again. Their hope for a franchise quarterback, that they actually fumbled it again. That's what they were attacking, is that thought process. So when you post it about Jaden, you're getting the same reaction from our fan base saying, how dare you attack our hope of what the quarterback is when you're just bringing up a legitimate question to say, I don't want to see this kid fall off a cliff like we saw with somebody else in recent memory. Not saying that they're the same person, but the outcome is what you are ultimately trying to avoid, is that you are trying to sustain and maintain that hope that this is the future of what we're going towards. So, the only caveat I would say is just when you make that tweet, just know it's not that they're in love with Jaden, that they want to get in the gold jacket. It's the hope. It's the hope that we finally got our legs under us and we can be a normal organization. And I know it's
Yep.
hard for everyone to see that at the moment, but the most important thing for Washington that I've been trying to have as a fan for many, many years is a direction. Because every time that we got a direction under Shanahan, under anybody, we had the direction, we had the hope, and then it was swiped out from under us. And that's what I am most important, like really taking a point to say we have that direction. We can't lose sight of that direction. But at the same time, I need the quarterback to also understand that he is a part of that direction, and him being on the field is vital to that direction being successful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, 1,000%. No argument. I guess too, going into this offseason, I mean, we see what's happening. Cliff Kingsbury, it was a mutual agreement for him to leave. And, you can't help as a fan to see how this season went. And then you see this happen and you say, God, here we go again.
Right.
Unfamiliarity, having to learn a whole new system. So not only now, and I'm not saying this as a negative, I'm just saying this as a general fan that's got basic knowledge of football, right? Like, I don't ever claim, I've told you over the years, there are so many people way smarter than me. You guys know, you guys could name the defenses that they're lining up in, what the players are supposed to do. I am more of a guy, I just look and honestly, I look to see who effed up, right? I look to see who messed up, who missed the tackle, who, like that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for. Or when you're at games live, it's honestly from where I sit, it's actually difficult to see everything that goes on. So, my I will never claim to know it all about football, but um, cohesiveness is something that you learn as a kid when you're playing sports. And
Yes.
when you don't have that cohesiveness, it can be very challenging.
Yes.
And so now, as a fan, looking at, a young offensive coordinator at this point, I know that, and maybe you can confirm and let me know. I don't know, but I'm sure it's Jaden Daniels approved. Um, Young coach. I heard Ben Johnson. I hear that there's just a lot of good talk about this guy. And over the years, we have said in the past, Kyle, or I've heard people say in the past, and I've read in the past that look at us letting all these young guys go, right? And so now we don't have a named guy in particular, right? We have someone that is brand new to calling plays. Um, and here he is. He's possibly the future of the NFL. As my kids are getting older, he could be an all-time great coach by then. We never know.
Mm.
As life continues, but we're doing exactly what we complained about. Years ago when we had LaFleur, when we had McVay on staff, when we had McDaniel, and they all went to other teams and head coached and became successful. So I'm not necessarily hung up on the name. I'm just a little nervous about the experience. And are we risking having less experience with a quarterback now? You know, I don't know, And so I feel like for me, when I came into this season, I was extremely excited. I had high expectations to be competitive. I didn't know what our record would be. I didn't put it at the same record as the year before. I put it at less, but I had high expectations of, at least getting into the playoffs. Anything's possible from there. I never like to predict playoffs, but getting into the playoffs, at least remaining competitive. And now I'm going in with the question of, well, that didn't happen. Our quarterback now has injuries. Can he stay healthy? And now we have an experienced play caller, you know, calling the plays. And that's kind of at this point where I'm at. So I'm not sure how to feel as a fan. I don't know how you feel, but I'm not sure how to feel as a fan coming into this season. I don't really know what to expect. I feel like that we have so many holes on both sides of the ball. I don't even know where this team begins
I
to
would
get better.
I would say that you and I as older fans, that we know that whenever expectations are high, we typically fall flat on our face. And that was evident by this season. You could make an example of. But my brother
Yep.
asked me this. He said, I don't like that that this could be a rift and an issue with Jaden because Jaden liked Cliff. And I
He
said, look,
did.
I don't think it's that bad as you think it is. Because in my personal opinion, when you go back to Jaden at LSU, he threw for 40 touchdowns, only threw for 4 interceptions. He was lighting it up downfield. This past season, the lighting up downfield was not a thing. And you can make an argument that he wasn't on the field all that much to be able to do so. But Cliff's system is a lot of horizontal stuff, where you're throwing short horizontally in order to mimic a running game, right? And then you're also targeting the tight end in the middle of the field, heck of a whole lot.
Which is why I'm assuming they acquired Debo.
Right, exactly. And so what I was saying to him is, I don't think Jaden is necessarily pissed about this. I think Jaden would understand to reach his ceiling, he probably needs to grow in another aspect. And if Cliff is not willing to grow another way, then I think that it's a good idea to part ways. Now with David Blau, it's a little bit different because quarterbacks in the NFL have to know everything offensively. They have to know everything that's going on. They have to know the checks. They have to know the slides of the offensive line, which way the blitz is coming, reading all of that. So naturally, a lot of quarterbacks are geared to being offensive coordinators because they already have to think this through, which is why like guys like Tony Romo or Tom Brady, when they're color commentating on these games, they can honestly tell you what's about to happen because they understand the game from that aspect. So I'd say that David Blau already has a leg up on the mental side of it. But the skepticism that I have is coming up with the game plan for the entire game, coming up with the different branches of plays. Because it's one thing to call a play every now and again and have it be successful, but coming up with the script, the first 15 play script, that is a legitimate concern of what's going to go on. But I'd also be willing to argue he also is quarterback friendly. And so he knows that the running game helps out a quarterback a heck of a whole lot. And given with his branches of guys that he worked with, I would imagine he understands that wholeheartedly. And he's willing to be able to do everything to protect Jaden, which gives me slight of hope. But I also am skeptical of how it's going to play out in the first year because you are running the risk of sacrificing your quarterback's third year for somebody coming in that's not having the experience and having to learn on the fly. And we all know any sort of job you get into, you're not going to hit the ground running and just skate away like Jaden Daniels in his rookie year. You're going to have bumps. You're going to have to get used to it. But I think that he has a great relationship with Jaden to the point where it makes it easier. Like if this was an offensive line coach that got thrusted into this with no experience, I would have an issue, right? But the fact that he's a quarterback coach, I think gives him a leg up and just gives me a little bit more reassurance that we made the right decision. Because like you said with LaFleur and others, I think they understood what was here and they did not want that to get poached again. And I admire the risk. Scared money don't make money,
Yep. And I definitely do agree with that. And at some point, risks have to be taken by NFL teams. And again, like you just mentioned, when you look at the history, let's not keep repeating, and making the same mistakes. So I do respect the risk. I don't hate the idea of this whatsoever. But again, circling back to what you said, maybe this upcoming year, it doesn't, all the puzzle pieces don't fall into place. But that's the part where it becomes impatient to me because we've been like this so many times. I've been trying to remain patient. And when you get our team to an NFC championship game and we regress all the way the next following season, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing as a fan. I'm embarrassed. I live in Eagles country, and I literally, the only hope that I had for this season is that the Eagles reach the playoffs and lose. And that happened. And when that becomes my Super Bowl, it doesn't say much about my football team. When I'm rooting so hard against the other team, and so yeah, frustration's gonna boil, is gonna boil, and I'm not going to be like a lot of other people and put Jaden Daniels on a pedestal. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not saying that the season was his fault, but when you're not on the field and you're not available, you're no good to us. And so, year 3, I have very high expectations for Jaden Daniels. Right? No more excuses. Okay, sophomore slump thing, because people would even argue and say that when he wasn't injured, he regressed. No, I don't think he regressed. I just think that that's the sophomore slump that people talk about, right? He's not going to come and he's not going to light up every game 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, right? But as fans, that's what we want to see.
Well, you also got
I
to
pers-
imagine that his first year was so historic and so damn good that
right.
being just good is, they would say, is a regression, which is perfectly fine. To
I agree.
expect for him to play at that level every single year in the NFL, that's impossible to do, man.
Especially because, again, like we all said, he carried this team on his back,
Right.
his rookie season, and for that I do appreciate, right? I appreciate anybody that comes in and truly wants, to help make, be winners and help, win on this football team. So, it's always appreciative, but again, when you come in and you show me what you can do, and I'm not talking about having shootouts and coming back and winning, with 2 minutes to go. I'm talking about a guy who could literally make throws in the pocket, a guy who can make a mistake but then come back and respond,
Mm,
the way that Jaden Daniels did. And truthfully, what really impressed me was not his stats, not his comebacks, it was his composure.
yeah.
Uh, his composure as a rookie in a game that is so much faster than college, and he did well. And that's what told me he can make it in this league. He can make those throws. He can do these things, but you can only do it when you're available. And if you're not available, then you don't do us any good. And I was concerned after the season because his mom is starting to talk a little bit more on Twitter, and she had tweeted out, a little encryptic thing and included, Cliff Kingsbury. And so that told me, oh, damn, they don't want him to go. And then all of a sudden we hear that he goes. And now I'm kind of concerned with that, because if anybody's going to know how Jaden Daniels feeling, it's not going to be you. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be the media, and it's probably not even going to be his coaches. It's going to be his mother.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. We're getting into another circus situation. And I hope it doesn't turn out that way. I really don't. History has shown that it can. But I think that we've gotten past that history. I think that, with ownership, I mean, I'm not saying anything anyone else hasn't said. I think that we have football people in the building that are making good football decisions. Now, what we have to do, and this goes back to me saying, Keith, you gotta be patient. But man, I'm so done with patience, you know. But now we've got to put the right pieces, and I did feel that Debo was a decent add piece to. I knew
Yeah.
what Cliff Kingsbury was wanting to do with his offense, so I didn't think that that was a horrible acquisition by any means. Unfortunately, those 3 guys, him, Daniels, Debo, and McLaurin, they just couldn't be out on the field together consistently, and so we really didn't get to see, a whole lot. And man, it was just disappointing, man. And when I'm disappointed like that, and I'm mad because I know that this team was better than what was shown this year, that's where the anger comes in. And I start reading all these tweets where here we go again, repeating the same thing that we did in 2012. I did it. I did it after RG3's injury, man. I didn't care. Come on back. You're going to be just as good as you were your rookie season. And I was all in. I fell in love with the guy. I mean, if you gave me an opportunity to be gay and marry him at that time, I would have done so. I would have reached out to Twitter and asked for some gift registries, and but and I got made fun of for it over the years, but I was committed, man. I was committed because I felt like just we got that excitement. So now I'm running into that trauma again, but I can wholeheartedly admit if we were to take a look at both quarterbacks, I would much rather have a Jaden Daniels all day long over a Robert Griffin III. So
I agree with you.
I personally, as a fan, hope that things turn around this season and Jaden Daniels has a better season. What I don't want to see is this quarterback class continue to reach the playoffs and continue to be successful. And then here we are once again
With our backs blown out.
with our backs blown out. Exactly. And we are being known for making the wrong picks. And,
Right.
And I don't think we made a wrong pick. I think we made a great pick. But again, I have to go into this season a little bit cautious, regarding his durability. And
I'm with you.
if you're a logical fan, everyone should.
Yep.
Everyone should.
I agree with you. Now, Keith,
It's scary, man.
I got to answer some fan questions. Do you want to answer them with me, or you got to get out of here?
Yeah, no, I can answer whatever.
So this one was by Tony Franchise regarding the new stadium. That was the renderings was just uploaded, and his question was: with the new stadium renderings out, what amenity would you like at the stadium that would make it stand out?
Listen, you know what? I'm actually a bad person to ask that question because I could go to their stadium now and not care. Man, I go into the stadium, bro. I never cared about. I don't drink. I don't watch the game on the TVs while I'm taking a pee. I don't know. I guess honestly, the amenity, if you consider this amenity, is just um, if you're gonna charge what you're charging for the food, at least make it good food.
Yeah.
That's really it. The inconsistency in their food this past season was a little wild to me. You get 3 chicken tenders, 2 of them are ginormous, and then I get a little tiny one in there. And then when I knock on the door and I say, "Hey, look, I'm not a complainer, bro, but look, the ratio portion here is not the same," and they look at me like my head's cut off, like I'm the one with the problem. So I don't know if amenity is food. I just say, man, for the prices that you're charging, give us better selection at food.
I'm with you there. I would to caveat off of that. I would say, my favorite restaurant is Texas Roadhouse. Put a Texas
Yeah,
Roadhouse in the stadium for everyone to dine at. Automatically,
restaurants. Yep.
that would stand out by far. But I think a lot of our military incorporated that would be another thing to help it just stand out a little bit more, given where it is. I know that ruffles people's feathers, but I honestly don't really care. Now, the next question that we have, Keith, is from the Colonel. He asks, given John Harbaugh's pedigree, do you see us chasing the New York Giants for the next decade?
I think the real question is not John Harbaugh, but is Jackson Dart a superstar quarterback? If he is, then yes. But I believe that the thing that I struggle with John Harbaugh that kind of makes me not so nervous about him coming to our division is he struggled to win with Lamar Jackson. What makes me think that Jackson Dart can win for him?
Yeah, that's a really good one. What John Harbaugh basically brings to you is leadership and direction, just stability,
Yeah.
right? Like John Harbaugh's background is special teams, and he's very, very good at it. That's why he got hired. He was fantastic at it. So it really is an easier way for an organization to employ an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator to do what they need to do because John Harbaugh wouldn't be meddling in it. He would allow them to do their thing, and he would just facilitate. He would manage. But ultimately, I think your point is a good one that the Giants are a team that are dependent on their quarterback play. And so they go as far as their quarterbacks do. Jackson Dart, can he keep himself healthy? Is John Harbaugh going to really push the envelope to make sure Jackson Dart is healthy game in and game out? That's a big question. But they do have the right tools. Do I think John Harbaugh is a bad head coach? Not at
No.
all. I think he's a fantastic head coach. He just has that leadership style. He gets along great with the players. It's just typically when you're in that position for a long period of time, like you could even say the same about Mike Tomlin. It's just at some point you need a change of scenery to try to get things going again. And that's ultimately what they had to do. So
Via Andy Reid.
exactly.
When he was with the Eagles. He almost was, kind of doing what John, Harbaugh was doing. with the Ravens, they were consistently competitive hitting the playoffs, but they just couldn't get it to that level. And that's what, Andy Reid was with the Eagles. Change of scenery. You saw what he could do with Kansas City.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And so it's a really tough question. Do I think that we're going to be chasing them? No. I think
No.
that we are definitely in the era of being able to be self-sustainable, not based on other teams being bad. I think ultimately this year it was just an accumulation, a thunderstorm, a tornado, a hurricane, a snowstorm, blizzard, everything all at once. Just as much as we were lucky last year, we got unlucky this year. Do I think we're going to be chasing them? No.
No.
I think that
Competitive? Yes.
if we had Dan Snyder, I would say yes, but we don't. So I would say that we are not going to be going down that route because we're not going to be getting in the way of ourselves. We're making the right educated decisions. We're not meddling. We're not trying to dictate based on what Josh Harris wants to do on the football field. He's cutting checks. He's doing what he needs to do. He's staying in his own lane. And that's what ultimately you need to do from a football franchise. Let the football people do their thing, actually get good football people to do their thing, not put them in roles that they're not suited for, like Ron Rivera being GM on top of it. So this is the smart way to go about it. We are building the right way for the first time in a long time. Let's have some faith. We're going to be good to go. John Mara is still up there in New York, and I still think that the leadership is ultimately the problem with all of them, to be honest with you. Now, the last question from the Colonel. Which of our old vets do you see coming back next year, Keith? Seems to me we'll be saying goodbye to some studs, noticeably Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz, and hopefully not Daron Payne to get rid of his salary cap.
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, I don't really care who goes at this point with the abysmal season that we've had this season. I'm not interested in vets. I'm interested in getting this team young.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. We definitely need speed in the middle of the field. I don't know what's going to go on with Bobby. I do think
Yeah.
that Bobby should be retained as a coach, not as a player coach. But if he's willing to lose reps and be on the line of scrimmage more, I'm all for it.
Yep.
And I know people have brought up Brian Flores, and look, I've said from the get-go, I don't think Minnesota is dumb. I don't think they'll literally let Brian Flores walk because they didn't have much on their defense, and they were one of the best defenses in the league. And I think from a structural standpoint, it's a home run for Washington. If you can't get after the passer, what's the best way to be able to create pressure? Confuse the offensive line and confuse the quarterback, which is what Brian Flores was doing all year long. That's fantastic. Let's go about it. But that being said, Brian Flores could do wonders with this type of defense of what we do have with Frankie Louisville and company. So do I really think that we're going to be losing out and on some key guys? No, I do think Duran's going to be coming back. I don't think that's going to be an issue whatsoever. I lost Keith. No. All right, but I'm still here, guys. Now, the next question that we have, this one is from in the Discord. This is our guy, Tim Towner. He asked the question, should we make a concerted effort to all meet at training camp on Military Appreciation Day? I absolutely do. We should be meeting up at training camp for Military Appreciation Day. It's going to be hard for all of us to get there, Tim, but I would love for everyone to get there at training camp. I didn't go last year. I was just too busy being over here out in Delaware in Eagles country, which I get way too much, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm in the same boat as Keith. It's annoying. But the funny thing about Eagles fans is how they portray themselves on social media. The Eagles fans that you meet are never like that.
Great.
And even at the stadium, you see that stuff. Like the Eagles fans, they're not like that at all. So ultimately what I'll say is we should be meeting up for Military Appreciation Day. But the last question, Keith, he said, Tim Towner asked, I fully expect these young hires to come with growing pains and that DQ and AP and Harris have talked that out. If so, then DQ's hot seat may not be as hot as we think it is, or is it?
Yeah, no, I actually think it's hot. And I think everything is going to determine, what this season is. Now, right now, do I think it's hot? No. I think that the team wants to give, DQ a continued chance. You're talking year two. Listen, year two, it didn't work out for him. He was successful year one. You can't just put the guy on the outs, and be necessarily on the hot seat right now. However, that hot seat will start firing up if we have another season like this coming up this year.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That will be a thing if it
Yeah.
continues to happen. I don't. Every coaching seat is hot if you really think about it. Like
Yeah.
very rarely are you going to go into a situation and say, "I'm not letting this guy leave." Even somebody like Mike Tomlin, who makes the playoffs every single year, he's got obviously he was constantly on the hot seat because they couldn't get over the hump. There's always something coming up for you. So of course DQ is on the hot seat, and what I would say is if Ben Johnson is correct in his estimation with David Blau being one of the young up and coming head coaches in the NFL, I think that we're kind of seeing the writing on the wall for how this is going to go about. I'm not going to go as far as to say that DQ is going to be out after next year, but I do
Right.
think that continuity is very important, especially for a franchise that continuously did not have continuity. So, as much as I want to see the ball rolling, I understand where DQ is at the moment. And at some point, Josh Harris and company, and you got Magic Johnson in their ear as well, saying like, "We need results. I'm not okay with losing constantly," and I get that. But continuity is very important. It's not as many people put as much stock into continuity. They think it's being attached to mediocrity. It's not that. From a ball player perspective, you can't come into a year not knowing how it's going to be for you. Like you have to be able to know what you're walking into, what you're supposed to be expected of, and how you're supposed to produce. And if you constantly bring those kind of questions into a guy, you're going to get less out of them, in my personal opinion. But for
Agreed.
overall, it's good to have pressure. Of course, it's good to have pressure, especially on DQ and company.
Yep.
Anything
Completely
else you want
agree.
to? Anything else you want to say, Keith, before we head out?
No, man, listen, I appreciate you. I know we've tried to connect a few times. It's tough, listen, man, you got grown kid, you're going to be in sports, it's, have fun while you do this, because I'm in the stage of my life now where I've had to give up quite a bit. And, to be quite honest with you, man, with my son being in high school, and I know you didn't ask to hear all this, but,
I'm listening.
um,
I'm here.
I think that this is something that's so important. Timing for me couldn't have happened any better than it did when we all got so close to the team at the time that we did during the whole name change and all of that. And we all got to experience so many cool things that a lot of people can say that, or can't say that they did.
Yeah.
And now, that has shifted and changed, which I'm completely fine with, because my life is actually shifting and changing as my kids are getting older too. I'm preparing my son, who is now in high school, and he's running marathons, he's training every summer, he's playing football, basketball, he's nonstop. This summer, this spring and summer, he's going to be positional training, for defensive end, and he's going to be starting varsity next year,
Woo!
as a sophomore. You know what I mean? And so as those things in my life change, my fandom kind of has to take a back seat. So to be able to have the opportunity to come and talk a little bit of football, because I haven't had much time to do it, on X, and catch up with you, you know, definitely appreciate it, man. Thanks for letting me pour out my whole life story to you.
No, dude, I love to hear it, and you're absolutely right because those years were special. With the team,
There we go.
they absolutely.
He's gotten so big, man.
Yeah, he has. He's wearing like size 17, like 7-year-old now, and he's only 4,
Yeah,
about to turn 5.
there you go.
But like you're right, because what we were able to do was really awesome, and I don't
Yeah,
take it for granted whatsoever. I understand where I'm at because I understand where you're at as well. This is family's more important, man. At the end of the day,
yep,
and as much as we love the team and we love talking about the team, you get to a point where your responsibilities are more important, and I
yep. They
totally get it.
shift.
I totally get it, dude. And we don't look at it as a bad thing that it's not here today, the same capabilities that we had in the past, but you just look at it and say, we did some really cool stuff, man. Like,
Yeah, man, we did. And not only that, we did cool stuff, but a lot of us met each other, man. A lot of
yep,
us, became close as fans. And before I did all that, I kind of felt like I was a loner fan, right? I
yep,
didn't really know people. And so to have that opportunity to, not be a goofball on Twitter and really actually get to meet you in person, and then to be able to have like these kinds of, conversations once in a while, on your podcast. I mean, you've been killing it, man. You've been doing such a great job. I know who your guests are on. I watch your, and listen to your pod, when I can, for the most part. And just keep doing your thing, man. You're killing it out there.
Not really, but I appreciate you for saying it, Keith. We're just trying to get
You
by as
are.
much as we can. We all have responsibilities. Hall's got kids
Yep.
now, and Reed, of
I know.
course, is working
Yep.
and his schedule. So it's been a crazy 2 years for us personally. But man, we had so much fun doing things that nobody else has done before. And I know you know
Yep.
what that is like. That you experienced it as well. You didn't expect or think that that was possible to possibly happen. You're grateful
Never.
that it did. And as much as you would love for that to continue to happen, you're not going to lose sight of what it was.
No, definitely not going to lose sight of what it was. But again, it all ended for me when it was supposed to, because now my
Yeah,
time is with my kids, and
my man.
that's where I'm giving it 100% to it. And you'll see that shift in life too. But other than that, man, thanks a lot for letting me come on and kind of chit chat a little bit about my discrepancies with this football team. I really appreciate you.
Of course, Keith. Have a good night. And everybody who made it this far, you're a freaking champion. Keith, before you get out of here, plug your social media handle, brother.
Oh man, it's at KG Skins 26. KG Skins 26. Drop me a line, and maybe we'll have a conversation.
Yeah, and don't get on Keith too much, all right? Just take it easy.
Yeah, leave me alone. Leave me alone. Take it easy. I say off the wall stuff, but I don't really mean it. I don't mean it. I'm an emotional guy. Wearing my emotions on my sleeve. Cut me some slack.
Right, my man. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the playoff games. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.